This is my pocket city. Called it Starport because it's a port city. We have the shipping over here and the boats coming through. So some of the key features are we have kind of like different neighborhoods, and each of them have commercial and residential zones either in or nearby because things should just be accessible to everybody no matter where they live, right? Public transportation is also a big thing. So we have Skyrail stations all about connecting different hubs. I should still add one over here. And then there are also buses. We have a bus depot over here, and then you can't really see them, but there are bus stops littered throughout the city, so you can get basically anywhere on either train or bus. The industry is also the industry that pollutes specifically is on more the outskirts of the city, so we can lessen pollution in the main parts of the city where people live. The majority of people live. There's also the river in the middle, which I think every pocket city has, and we also have lots of trees and parks to lessen that pollution and to also add recreation. Oh, and it looks like we have a crime going on. What makes my city ideal or utopian? So, for one, we have a democratic socialist government and economy. Everything is for the people and controlled by the people, and the people are what matter the most in the city. So there's no power hungry government officials or anything like that, and it's truly representative. The environment is one of the biggest issues here in my stats. I have a 99% environment rating, which is awesome. That's why there are so many trees and parks to reduce the pollution. And people also coexist with the environment. So they do interact with the environment and they do it very thoughtfully. So people will grow their own food and they'll spend time in nature without destroying it and stuff. Having access to education and jobs is very important. Also in my stats, you can see that 100% of citizens are educated either in school or university or have gotten an education. I'm not 100% sure what it means. And jobs support 100% of citizens as well. So everybody is able to work. It's a sanctuary city for queer people and immigrants. Everybody is welcome. It also has universal healthcare. Healthcare should not be an issue at all for people, especially people who may need sustained or more healthcare. There also aren't extremely long waiting lists. People don't have to worry about the cost, and anybody is able to access any healthcare that they need. Hospitals are also accessible by rail and bus, so if you don't have a car, they're easy to get to. The industries focus on manufacturing clean vehicles and machinery for the city, and then there's also some agriculture. The arts are very important as well. People love the arts, and people who work in the arts are able to sustain themselves working in the arts. Citizens have a good work-life balance as well and are able to interact with their families and friends. Jobs are understanding. Buses are free and rail is cheap. It depends on the distance you're going for rail, but it's never more than $2.50 for a ride. The buses and rail are also on time and they are accessible. And workers are also encouraged to unionize and to communicate with each other about their pay and their benefits and their work-life balance to make sure that everybody is treated fairly in the office or whatever other job they may work. Things the game prevented me from doing. One of my main things is that it requires you to have a lot of industry, especially early on, and a lot of it causes pollution because you're not even allowed to add stuff like farms until you're a higher level. So when you're at these lower levels, you're just adding so many factories and it adds pollution. And it's nice that you can add trees around the factories. It gives you that hint to add trees around the factories to lessen pollution. So I did that, but I wish my city didn't have so many factories creating pollution. Another complaint that I have is it makes you put down just roads or bridges or highways or whatever. I just did roads and then bridges across the river, and then also the sky rail. But I wish it had an option where you could just put sidewalks if you want an area that doesn't have roads, like some of my residential neighborhoods, maybe just like a main road connecting it to the rest of the city. But I wish there's an option to put just a sidewalk in some parts. Another complaint that I have is that you can't rearrange already placed buildings. You can demolish them and then put something else there, but I don't really like how my city looks, and I wish I was able to rearrange things, but with what I got at certain levels and with what it made me place at the beginning of the game and stuff like that, I wasn't able to have the city look exactly like I wanted. So at some point I may start over and do it for fun, so I can make my city look exactly how I want it to. And then kind of another complaint I have is that you level up so quickly. I played for 5 hours and ended at level 48, and with that it also makes you develop so quickly with the different quests you unlock and the different buildings and items and things that you unlock as you level up. And I wish that you could just develop slower. And all of these things make me believe the developers may not be that environmentally conscious and may also be capitalistic. I think the game is more focused on build the best city, the city that makes the most money, stuff like that, without really putting into consideration things like the environment and walkable cities, things like that. So to compare and contrast with Walt Disney's Epcot and Thomas More's Utopia. So unlike Epcot, people's worth is not tied to their productivity. If you're unable to work due to disability or mental illness, or even just a short-term illness or injury, that's okay, and people will not think of you as less than a human. And for people with more long-term disability, illness, mental health, that sort of stuff, there are setups to be able to work from home, have your own business, or just be supported by the government and by your fellow citizens if you're unable to work. And unlike Thomas More's Utopia, people have the freedom to live life how they want. There's no mandates on how many kids you can have. There's no requirements to live life a certain way, do things a certain way. Different religions are accepted, different ways of life are accepted. And then of course there's no slavery, indentured servitude, anything like that as well. But then, like Walt Disney's Epcot, the city does emphasize creative thinking and education. It is important, and everybody should be able to get an education, and that's why education is free. The arts are also important and appreciated, and they're accessible, so anybody who wants to see theater or go to a museum is able to do that. And then there's also lots of public transportation options, so people don't have to drive if they don't want to. Now let's go on a walk through Richmond. Just go back from the walk, and here is what's not included in the game and why I think that's the case. So one of the main things I noticed is that the VCU area has a more historical feel architecturally than the Pocket City. So in the Pocket City, you're not able to customize sidewalks, roads, buildings to look more historical, old-timey, or more futuristic. One of the things I did notice you can do is that you can change the appearance of the town hall, like you can unlock different appearances, but that's the only thing I noticed. Like if you want to make your sidewalks cobblestone, if you want to make your buildings brick, you don't have the option to do that. You're stuck with what the game gives you. And another thing I noticed is all of the people interacting on my walk. You see people walking together in pairs, in groups, holding hands, talking, sitting on the benches, coming back from shopping, eating in restaurants, stuff like that. But you don't get that in Pocket City. The people, the little characters will say things, but they're not interacting with each other, and they're not doing any of the things I mentioned, really. I mean, sometimes you'll get like a guy fishing, somebody doing yoga, but it's not really other stuff I mentioned. They're not interacting with each other much. Honestly, I think it's because that's just not the point of the game. I think the point of the game is more what it's like to run a city financially, the economics, the infrastructure, and just the big picture, and not the small things and the human interaction. And I think that would be a really cool thing to see in a city building game.